I did everything right last night, but it wouldn't let me hit go live for some reason. It would just like sit there and spin, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go to something else. All right. Sorry for anybody who's watching right now. There's 6 watchers. Hi, 6 watchers. I'm gonna put going to put several things into our chat. And if you are watching right now, I'm going to head in YouTube. I'm going to put the playbill link in, a link to donate to our actors as an actors relief fund, those ones that are performing today. Then several links to lots of theater by Romani artists, which is going on right now in Hungary. I don't know if you guys know, but there's a hip hop group from Austria called Minge Panthers, which is like Black Panthers, but the word minge is like the Rama word for pussy, and they like wanted to be in solidarity with Pussy Riot. So they're Black Panthers and Pussy Riot making an awesome hip hop group that's Romani and Austria. They're badass. You should look them up.
Doing it
That's
right
a
now.
link I'm putting in there.
Sounds like pre-show music.
I wore my Black Panther shirt yesterday.
I know you did, and I was so distracted by all of the technical difficulties I was having. I couldn't like tell you that you were like so on point with that, but you were, Chanel. You were on point. So you got, but your mother is so sweet. She sent me a nice note.
Hello.
All right, we seem to be working today. Hi, John.
Hello.
It's good to see you. I'm gonna shut the window.
Is it now? Okay, Chanel. I see how it is.
Sorry, I was shutting my window. Yes, it is good to see you, and I wasn't being sarcastic nor facetious. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put our pre-show music in and do my first announcement. If I am not being heard with both, please let me know in the chat.
Kind of quiet. This oh god, my face. Kind of quiet.
I'm quiet.
A little bit.
Is that better?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. Forgot to hit share. For those of you just arriving, welcome to SUNY Sullivan's Zoom Theater lobby. Kindly let us introduce you to some of our virtual features. Let your fellow audience members know that you're here by typing in the live chat in YouTube or in the Zoom room. You can type in your location, the number of people in your party that are watching with you, and where you are. You should be hearing the Rama song, Amariti Amari, and watching our pre-show slideshow. If you are not, please either raise the hand icon or type in raise hand, or if you have an emoji, you can raise your hand. So many choices that you can do. And I will attempt to help you. I also recognize that there's a 20-second delay for YouTube, so I'll get to you when I receive that you need help.
Amari si amari. Amari si amari, amari ci nibori, ay la 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 la. la 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 la. Hey, dui, desce, dui, tu mi dau me la comuiai. La 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 la. La comu si rupulo, pușche trubuladino, ai, la 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 la. Hey, la comu si rupulo, pușche trubuladino, ai, la 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 la. Che savrà drom, te che le lo puro Roma, la 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 la. Puro Rom, te che le la, vista je la la la, la 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 la. Amari si amari.
I just realized.
Amari si amari, amari cinibori, ai la 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 la. Amari si amari, amari cinibori, ai la 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 la. Dui, desce dui, tu mi dau me la comui, ai la 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 la. Hey, dui, desce dui, tu mi dau me la comui, ai la 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 la. La comu si rupulo, pușche trubuladino, ai la 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 la. Hey, la comu si rupulo, pușche trubuladino, ai la 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 la. Che savrà drom, te che le lo puro Roma, la 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 la. Puro Rom, te che le la, vista je la la la, la 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 la.
Hello, welcome to SUNY Sullivan Zoom Theater Lobby. Kindly let us introduce you to some of our virtual features. Let your fellow audience members know that you're here by typing in the chat feature in the Zoom room or in the YouTube live chat. with your location and the number of theatrical observers in your party. You should be, in a second, hearing
Amari si amari.
the lovely sounds of the Romani song Amarizi Amari. If you do not and you can't see the slideshow, please either use the raise hand icon, an emoji of raise hand, or type into the live chat that you need help, and I will attempt to help you. I also recognize there is a 20-second delay, so I will help you after the 20-second delay. And I will let you continue to enjoy the slideshow.
Hey, dui, desce, dui, tu mi dau me la comuiai. La 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 la. La 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 la. Hey, la como si rupuno, pushke trubulatino. La 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 la. Keren savra le drum, tekkele lo puro Roma. La 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 la. Puro Rom tekkele la, vista yeches ma la la. La 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 la.
All right, welcome to the SUNY Sullivan Zoom Theater lobby. If you've already heard this announcement, you can just ignore me. Kindly let us introduce you to some of our virtual features. Let your fellow audience members know that you're here by typing in the chat in the Zoom room or on YouTube live chat, your location and the number of theatrical observers in your party. You should be, here in a second, listening to the delightful sounds of the song Amarizi Amari.
Amari si amari.
And seeing our slideshow. If you are not, please use the raised hand icon or type in I need help to the live chat and I will do my best to assist. Enjoy the
Amari si amari, amari tinibori, la 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 la. Dui dui desce dui, tu mi dau me la comuiai, la 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 la. Hey dui dui desce dui, tu mi dau me la comuiai, la 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 la.
Welcome to the SUNY Sullivan Zoom Theater lobby. Let me introduce you to some of our virtual features. Let your fellow audience members know that you're here by typing in the chat in the Zoom room or in the live YouTube chat. Type in your location and how many people are watching with you. You should be, in a couple of seconds here, hearing the delightful sounds of the song Amaritsi Amari and seeing the slideshow. If you are not, please use the raised hand icon or type in "I need help" to the chat and I will do my best to assist you.
Amarisi Amari. Amarisi Amari, Amarici Nibori, ay la 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 la. Amarisi Amari, Amarici Nibori, ay la 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 la. Dui dui desce dui, tu mi dai me la comui, ay la 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 la. Hey dui dui desce dui, tu mi dai me la comui, ay la 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 la. La 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 la. Hey, la como si rupuno, pushke trubuladino. La 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 la. Keren savra le drum, tekkele lo puro Roma. La 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 la. Puro Rom tekkele la, vista yekes ma la la. La 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 la.
Hello and welcome to the SUNY Sullivan Zoom Theater lobby. If you've already heard this announcement, you can ignore me. Kindly let us introduce you to some of our virtual features. Let your fellow audience members and our particular performers know that you're here by typing in the chat in the Zoom room or in the YouTube live chat with your location and the number of people in your party. You should be, here in a second, hearing the lovely sounds of the song Amaritsi Amari and watching our pre-show slideshow. If you are not, please use the raised hand icon or an emoji of sorts, or just type "help me" and I will do my best to do so.
Amarisi Amari. Amarisi Amari, Amarici Nibori, ay la 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 la. Amarisi Amari, Amarici Nibori, ay la 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 la. Dui dui desce dui, tu mi dai me la 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 la. Hey, la como si rupuno, pushke trubuladino. La 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 la. Che savrà le dom, te che le lo puro Roma. La 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 la. Puro Roma, te che le la, vista ye jazz la la la. La 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 la.
All right, it is 8 o'clock, and I am going to get us started. For those of you watching, there's a 20-second delay, but here we go. Welcome, friends, to our SUNY Sullivan Zoom Theater for this very special live reading of And the Violins Stopped Playing, book by Alexander Ramati and adapted for live performance by myself, Jessica Lopez-Barkle. I am the Associate Professor of Theater and Speech and the Theater Program Director for SUNY Sullivan. This is our first production for our 2020-2021 theater season, where we are using the literal or figurative world war. We are examining plays where war occurs in the micro or macrocosm. This particular show you're about to watch is a hybrid of an audiobook and live performance, as the book that inspired this performance has been adapted into Book It Repertory Theater's Trademark Style, which is a theater company in Seattle, Washington, and if you've never experienced it, you should. This is an experiment, as any Zoom theater is in our challenging times, combining the forms of live theater, live performance, and live Zoom performances streamed out into the ether of YouTube for all to experience. For the best results, you should be watching this on a computer. Not saying you have to, but the best results. For optimal viewing, please watch on a computer with a full screen. We also recommend turning off any notifications and closing any applications on your computer, as they can slow down your computer and therefore slow down our performance. We have 21 performers from every walk of my theater journey, and I'm going to go ahead and move to gallery view and ask them to pop into their video pieces so you can see this amazing quilt of people that are from 6 different countries and time zones, 6 different states, and at least 18 different indigenous tribal lands that we are streaming from or that we grew up on, so we feel that land as a part of us. We are currently streaming from the Esopus tribe, which is a part of the Lenape tribe of the Delaware Nation. And that's where in the YouTube world you are seeing this from. These Zoom tiles that just popped into screen are, as I said, a quilt that is the fabric of my theater life. And I'm going to have them raise their hands several times if it applies to them. They have been fellow theater ensemble members. They are current or former students, classmates from my undergraduate school or graduate school, original cast members when we did this at Sarah Lawrence College in 2004. And all of them are dear, dear friends, and I am so lucky to have them here. I am humbled that they are taking their time to join us in this convening of a piece of forgotten history. From Dr. Ian Hancock's book, We Are the Romani People, Ame Sam Ramane Jene, quote, "The greatest tragedy to befall the European Romani population was the attempt to eradicate it as part of the Nazis' plan to have a gypsy-free Europe. Although it wasn't the first governmental plan to exterminate Romanies, German Emperor Karl VI had previously issued such an order in 1721. It was by far the most devastating, ultimately destroying over half of the Romani population in Nazi-controlled Europe. Romanis were the only other population other than Jews who were targeted for extermination on racial/ethnic grounds in the final solution. People of African descent were also taken and eradicated, but most of the time they weren't sent to concentration camps because they were killed before the concentration camp order came through. They were killed in random street side killings, etc. Note that in Germany, the traditional Romani population calls itself Sinti, while the word Zigeuner is the German equivalent of gypsy and should be avoided. In Romani, the Holocaust is referred to as the Baro Parajmos, or great devouring of human life. Parajmos is an ugly word, well chosen for the ugliest event in our history. It can also mean rape, as well as gaping, as in shock or horror. Some people hesitate to say the word out loud. End quote. I, along with my fellow Cornish College of the Arts, we can raise our hands again, students were taught by the inimitable John Wilson to always ask the question, why this play at this time? My answer is another quote from Dr. Ian Hancock's book. Quote, calling a population vermin or a disease rather than recognizing it as being part of the human family is a technique used to dehumanize it and distance it from society. Such terms were constantly used to refer to Jews and Romanis in the Third Reich in an effort to desensitize the general population to the increasingly harsh treatment being meted out against them. After all, vermin and diseases need to be eradicated. Disturbingly, this language is still with us. End quote. This desensitizing language is heard by current opponents of Romani citizenry all over the world, the Black Lives Matter movement, and immigrants attempting to enter the borders of the United States of America. Behind most of our participants is the flag of the Romani people, a people with no homeland, who have never started a war, and who have never taken over a foreign government. The blue and green represent the heavens and the earth. The red wheel is a 16-spoke chakra, cartwheel or caravan wheel that represents the itinerant nature of the Romani people, their Indian origin, and the importance of fire as the burst of energy that began the universe. The running time for part 2 of And the Violins Stopped Playing is about 1 hour and 10 minutes, I think. I lied yesterday, so I apologize. So it could be a little longer. Please be gentle with us. We didn't get a proper, we only had 2 rehearsals. Everyone in here is lovely. We only had 2 rehearsals this week. Afterwards, you are welcome to stay with us and have a talk back and a meet and greet of all of the people, some from Germany, Switzerland, where it is quite late right now, and France, Canada, all over the United States. Please come and meet them and ask them about the show or ask me about the show. In the links in the YouTube live chat, there you should see a givebutter.com link, which if you put money there, when I have shows at my real theater, the Space, I ask people for a suggested donation of $10. I don't charge for this to create equity in theater. So I'm not forcing anyone to pay, obviously. But if you do have at least $10, please go ahead and give it to our actors, because I will, once I have all of the money in there, I'm going to separate it, Venmo, PayPal, however, whatever works for these people. We will be giving them a piece of the money you are donating. This will all go to the artists, as artists should be paid. And if you've been watching the newspaper, it is terrible. Our industry is still being pushed off to June 2021 today, as of the New York Times. There is also a link for Voice of Roma, which can help promote and support Romani arts. If you want to know more about our participants and the tribal lands that they belong to or are streaming from, there is a link to the playbill in the chat. There is also a link in the chat to experience more live performance made and performed by Romani theater artists. As the theater world begins to grasp the concept of who has the right to tell stories and what stories should be told, it is important to note that forgotten histories are important, but the current struggle is also important. Romani culture is alive and well and does not need to have only its stories of trauma told. We will be telling one of those stories of trauma and resistance tonight, but there are many more stories to be heard and told. Please check out please check this work out and support the On the Edge work of Minj Panther and Givlepen Theater, in addition to many other theater artists that are being featured right now in the Roma Theater Retrospective 2020. Now we are ready to go. But before we begin the show, please practice giving rounds of applause to our theater artist right here in our beautiful quilt. Use those clever clap hand icons, the heart, the party emoji, whatever you can. We miss hearing you, so find ways to do it. And we just love seeing all of you, and we just want to keep hearing you. There is a 20-second delay, but I know that that means a lot to me when I see it, and I hope that it means a lot to my fellow theater artists here in the quilt with me. All right. We will now begin part 2 of And the Violins Stop Playing. Scene 1, A Dream of Spring, projection, Hungary. Amaritzi Amari is being heard by a lone violin. Lights up on the Romani's traveling, now with Romani clothes again. They begin to sing along with Demeter's playing. Those not on wagons, but walking along with the wagon should be dancing. Cards from the previous act should bump up in the projection screen periodically.
It's going to be a lovely day,
Zoya said.
smiling at the sight of blossoming fruit shrubs.
It was around 8 when our road joined the highway running from the Austrian border. It was the first time in my life that I truly loved being a Romani. The sounds, the air, and my Zoya.
We traveled on past white-walled villages and hills where
Barefoot shepherd boys with their dogs were driving their flocks of sheep.
Past decayed chapels, centuries old, or gilded figures of Christ nailed to wooden crosses.
I love this life, this Romani life. Play on, Father, play on.
Roman kisses Zoya as lights crossfade. Music distorts slightly. Sounds of a train come in briefly. The dancing Romanis are now slowly moving together and huddling. Amaritzi Amari fades into just Demeter playing. Roman steps out to watch the dream as Mengele is revealed. Lights fade up a little more on Rosa while she tells Bolek a story. Slowly during this speech, the train sounds come up louder. Some Romanis turn into German soldiers. It is important that the atmosphere remain joyous until the end of this scene. It's to be played as though this were a dream where strange elements are coming in to create a nightmare.
Long, long ago, people in this world began to believe that the Romani descended from Egypt, that our leader was a pharaoh. This is not true. We came from India and we were part of the Kashitya caste, meaning rulers, authority figures. We would fight in wartime and govern in peacetime. I tell you, this because no one bothers to listen to us, and the Gaji say what suits their romantic notions.
She points to Bolek's heart.
You must do your best to exist knowing our truth.
She holds and snuggles Bolek.
We left our homeland to search for a better life and safer life, but everywhere we went, people were afraid of us. They made laws to stop us from joining their workforces. We were not a wandering group. We were an organized group, but no one wanted our skills. We were forced to wander and sell our wares and work the land when it needs work. Our ironwork, our music, our horses, our fortunes. Thus, we wander until the world can accept us as we are. We've been doing this for 1,500 years.
Amaritsi Amari strikes up again. Some Ramanis continue to dance in the spring sequence of the dream, while others are huddled together in the train car, part of the dream. Roman comments on the action as if he is in it and watching it.
We were huddled together like cattle.
Standing.
Because there's just room enough for the old people to sit on the floor.
We exchanged places at the ventilation slats frequently in order to share a whiff of fresh air and a glimpse of the outside world.
That view was a sentry, with its rifle marching up and down the length of our front.
His grandfather says, "From the distance came the eternal railway noises."
The train rode quietly through the night. For a while, we traveled fast for a cattle train. Telegraph poles along the track, whipping like blows on my eyes. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was my
father. His face was gloomy and his bushy eyebrows furrowed. His lips tightened.
I gave up my place at the truck's opening to my
father, so that he could rest his eyes on the fields, green again in the spring. Look!
My father suddenly exclaimed,
pointing at a road sign. It read, Auschwitz, 20 kilometers.
After a while, the road swung away from us. Another line appeared along ours, and then, unexpectedly and with a sharp jolt, it came to a halt.
My father
stuck his head out as far as he could, looking right and left. We are in the middle of nowhere.
A peasant woman enters. Music distorts briefly, then continues on.
A large handkerchiefed peasant woman was working some distance away, breaking the earth with her hoe.
My father
turned brusquely, casting a reflective glance on
Mara, now calm, holding her mother's hand.
His eyes narrowed. His breath was labored, but then he heard voices outside and swung back to the truck's opening.
The German guards were outside the train.
They looked tired.
Their helmets tipped forward over their noses.
Their rifles held limply in the crooks of their arms.
We heard a rattle of wheels approaching.
It ran slowly past our train,
pulling cattle trucks.
The Stars of David and the word Juden chalked on.
But although the doors were partly ajar,
no faces were visible.
At the ventilation slats.
And no soldiers wrote on the running boards.
The train had no doubt discharged its passengers.
Father and I exchanged
dejected looks.
Suddenly, my father
turned to
Mara,
grabbed her and lifted her in his arms.
What are you doing?
Terrified, The girl threw her little arms around my father's neck, trying desperately to cling to him and kicking her legs against the wall as he strove
to straighten them with his hand and to push them out of the car.
No, no!
She sobbed hysterically.
I was paralyzed, unable to say or do anything.
The fields were moving.
Hide in the bushes,
my father ordered.
Until our train disappears, then run to that woman and ask her to take you in.
And Mother understood. Yes, Mother, she cried out, do as Father says. We shall return for you. She lied. She had no time to kiss her daughter. Her lips just brushed the air.
My sister.
Obediently let.
My father.
Squeeze her tiny body out of the truck, her legs dangling in the air.
The train was moving quicker now.
My father.
Slid.
Mara down.
As far as he could towards the ground.
Then let her slip out of his arms.
She fell, turning over.
I could not see whether she had hurt herself, but I caught a glimpse of her.
Lifting her little face to look after us and dashing behind a bush as she'd been told.
Mara exits. Amari distorts some more and more. And then the sounds of Strauss's Gypsy Bear and Treasure Waltz starts to come into play from a string quartet quite clearly. Now there are 3 parts performing on stage. Some Romanese are still dancing, some are in the train car, and some are now going through disinfection. Roman still stands with Mengele throughout, commenting on the action.
In front of us, I could see row after row of barracks, behind wide ditches and triple barbed wire with numerous watchtowers, the tallest of which loomed in front of us, rising above a gateway between 2 large buildings. On the gate was an arched metal work sign, Arbeit macht frei.
Work frees you.
The Strauss music distorts. The lights fade to just Roman for a moment, stuck in his dream, wrestling with what he can comprehend.
It was only a couple of months ago that my tribe, my wife, my family, and I all made it to Hungary. We were dancing. No Makita Kowal.
Makita Koval enters briefly to stand by Roman.
Roman
Died when he was too stubborn not to leave his horse when we crossed the mountain. No, my friend.
Pavel enters to stand by Roman.
Pavel
risked his life to save us all when we were crossing the border. I just got married. I'm a Romani. I'm Polish, not Romani. Our apartment in Warsaw, I was sleeping.
Strauss waltz comes up louder and clearer. Lights crossfade to the 3 dream sequences again. Pavel and Mikita disappear.
The only men may come down. Women wait. Sauna, Entlausung, disinfection.
I looked at my
father. He nodded slightly as if agreeing with the sergeant.
I turned to
Zoya, still on the truck, her eyes following me.
Gave her a nod, like my father had me.
Scenes for the men and women in the saunas happen simultaneously on either side of the playing space.
We trudged
into the building.
Undress and hand over your clothes.
We did
as instructed.
I tried to keep my gold watch.
But the sergeant said, everything. You must keep nothing. It will be given back to you.
My father
held his fiddle tight to himself.
It will be given back to you. All gypsies get their instruments back. Get into the sauna.
But the next room to which we were sent.
Naked as the day we were born.
Was not the sauna.
I saw several Jewish prisoners here.
Each holding
inheritance in his hand.
They all looked very thin.
Their bones protruding.
Their eyes sunk deep.
Wearing a perennially sad, resigned expression.
My hair was being swiftly cut off, and I watched it falling down. The only blonde locks on the floor among dark Rama hair.
Go, take a shower.
Take a shower.
I was handed
bar and a towel and passed through the door.
I saw several rows of showers.
Hell.
I heard
Branko Notkin hiss in disgust. When I wash, I feel dirty. I no longer feel like a man.
But then he went.
So did all of us.
For me, it was not a problem. I had always taken showers in Warsaw.
The water was icy cold.
The same
Prisoners.
we had seen before had
Striped uniforms ready piled up for us on the table.
Each of us was handed a set and also a
So a pair of wooden shoes picked up from baskets on the floor.
I have 2 left ones.
I heard Anthony Puma complain.
Mine are too big.
Mine are too small.
This is not a shoe shop. No exchanges allowed. You be quick. Ladies are waiting.
Fever led out the back door and
Flushing through the mud.
Reached an alleyway running parallel to the main one.
We could not see our women.
Or they.
Us.
With a heavy heart, I thought of my
Wife's beautiful long raven hair about to land on the floor, put into a sack, and then probably taken by train on the way to Germany.
Stand in line.
We
Formed a queue.
Bare your arms.
Did not
the first
understand
of the
why.
prisoners behind the table was dipping a needle into an ink pot.
and tattooing the capital letter Z and a 4-digit number.
When our registration was over,
We were all taken to another barrack.
This is where you'll live.
We entered.
my eyes darted towards
Zoya. She was trying to hide the crown of her head with her hand, and so was
my
Mother, who was right behind her.
My heart went out to them both. My father
Closed his eyes tight as he could not bear this humiliation.
I'm sorry.
Sorry for what?
My hair. She kept her distance, unsure of his reaction, her hands still trying to cover her bare head.
My God, I said and took her into my arms. I love you for yourself, not for your looks. I mean, I added quickly, it doesn't matter, your hair. Besides, it will grow back. Haven't you seen the others? They allow the hair to grow back. They shave it off just the one time for hygiene.
How long will it take for my hair to grow back?
My lovely Zoya. All she was concerned about in this concentration camp was her looks.
So that she could again be her beautiful self for her husband.
A few months. Although it was daytime, we settled on our bunks to get some sleep after all the time and traveling since being caught on the road in Hungary.
Zoya more confidently cuddled.
Into my shoulder, and when I kissed her,
She eagerly, as if almost disbelieving it, smothered me passionately with kisses.
I made love to her. Not because I really felt like it or had the strength to, but because it was the only thing I could do to convince her that I loved her even without her hair. And at the same time to reassure ourselves that we were both alive in Auschwitz.
Lights fade to just Roman and Mengele, and then out. Scene 2, Josef Mengele. Lights up on the Romanis, Mengele, and other German officers. Reality has now hit. A gong is heard.
The SS guards were
calling us to get into line.
This time, they began assigning jobs.
Like all the families.
We stood together.
I noticed that one of the officers was dressed differently from the others.
He wore jodhpur boots and white gloves as if he had been called on duty just before going out.
Slowly, our turn came.
Our turn came.
The officer wearing the gloves picked up
My father's
file, then looked up, his eyes squinting as if searching his memory.
What struck me about him was not just his swarthy, almost Romani complexion, but a large cleft between his upper teeth that somehow looked familiar.
The German raised his forefinger. I know you, he said.
Pointing to me.
A flash of recognition dawned.
On my father and me.
At the same time.
Fukier's wine cellar.
Of course, in Warsaw Old Town.
You asked my father to play the Brahms and the Liszt, and you liked him very much. You're a doctor. You gave me a shot for being an Aryan youth, remember?
Correct. Dr. Josef Mengele.
I heard some music playing when we arrived. Do you have an orchestra?
Orchestra?
My father asked.
Bewildered.
Of course. What kind of a gypsy camp would it be without an orchestra?
My father, my mother, they played that night. You remember them. And my wife, she is a dancer, a very good dancer.
It is a string orchestra, and your father is the only one in your family who plays the violin.
Remember, you invited my father to come to your hometown for an engagement.
Well, I'll have to keep my promise to you, only seeing as how you were once the spitting image of our leader's dream. Auschwitz is now my hometown. Your father will play in the orchestra.
He consulted his colleague.
Then looked at the files. Your women will get jobs in the kitchen. Your grandparents won't work. Too old. As for you, young man, you are coming with me.
Lights crossfade to the doctor's office. Scene 3, the doctor's office. Lights up on Roman walking in the playing space. Bugle sound.
When I trudged through the mud to Dr. Mengele's office, there were a number of...
Lights reveal children and guards in Mengele's office.
Children there!
Under the supervision of 2 guards.
At 8 o'clock, Dr. Mengele arrived.
Accompanied by a blonde German nurse in uniform.
He put on the doctor's white overall, picked up a magnifying glass, and bent over the children. One after another, he lifted
their eyelids to examine their eyeballs.
He selected a pair of twin girls, their bared numbers tattooed with ZW for Zwilling twins, above their camp number.
Then he addressed me.
Ask those children their names, where and when they were born, and to what tribe they belong.
I took down the information.
Light brown eyes. Be sure you're right. Light brown, not brown.
Then he told the nurse.
Transcribe the information from his notes into your book. Weigh the girls and measure their height as usual, then give them the injections. Same dose is given to the others, 1 a day. I want to see them again in 10 days.
As a guard led the children out.
Dolmetscher.
I heard the by now familiar voice.
Calling me by my new job name.
Translator.
Come with me. We're going to the hospital.
I followed Mengele out of his office and then to a huge barrack complex nearby surrounded by barbed wire with
guards posted by the
entrance.
Jewish doctors and Romani patients are revealed. In the first barrack, Romani women were lying on the rows of
three-tiered bunks.
Most of them naked.
Their skin covered with infected scurvy sores, their weight shrunk to half of their normal weight.
10 died last night from gangrene. We're running out of medicine. We need vitamins, vitamin C especially.
Mengele shrugged. Take the best care of him you can, Flager.
He moved on to a young, pretty woman lying on the lowest bunk, her face still unscarred by sores.
And asked her a question.
She answered in a Romani dialect.
Mengele beckoned me. Ask her where her wounds are.
I did so.
The woman opened her long nightskirt to show her chest.
Most of the skin there was gone, revealing her bare red flesh.
As the doctor went on looking at his patients,
I asked one of the Polish doctors, why does he call you all
Flager?
male nurse?
Only an Aryan can be a doctor. We are Jewish.
We went on to the next barrack, which was filled with
male typhus patients.
Then the next.
Reserved
for those with
those
dysentery
with
and chronic diarrhea.
diarrhea.
And after that, to one filled
Only with children.
Only with children.
terrible stench permeated the air.
The patients had mouths infested with ulcers, inside and outside.
Some also had their cheeks perforated by illness.
The most sickening sight I had ever seen.
are you giving vitamins to them, Epstein?
Mengele asked the middle-aged man in charge of the barrack. Yes, doctor.
Good, asked the girl.
Mengele said to me when Epstein was called to a patient.
Whether she gets vitamin pills.
The girl confirmed it.
Mengele wanted to be sure that the Jewish doctors gave pills to the sick and did not steal them for themselves.
It was different here, I noticed. Compared to the scurvy department, vitamins were available here.
When Epstein returned,
Mengele said, as if explaining his decision, I am especially interested in Noma. I may even write a scientific paper on it. I want everyone to be well treated.
I know, I'm doing my best.
Mengele said, as if explaining any case of recovery.
No, doctor, not one so far.
Crossfade to Mengele's office.
It was when we returned to his office that I suddenly heard.
The Blue Danube by Johann Strauss begins to play in the distance.
The music. In the distance, violins were playing the Blue Danube. Through an open window came the smoldering stench of roasting meat.
Mengele himself shut the door angrily.
I looked out and saw the chimneys of the brick buildings, belching forth huge streaks of flame and smoke. It was from over there that the sound of the violins was coming.
It was intended to calm the Jews going inside. Soap and towel in their hands, no doubt believing they were taking a bath. Except it was not a bathhouse, but a crematorium. Not you, though. If I can figure out how to turn your people Aryan, you I shall teach. I don't have to make your hair blonde or your eyes blue, but I do have to change what goes on in here.
He pointed and tapped my head.
Good. Now today is an important day. I'm going to begin teaching you how to become a real Aryan. Are you ready? And if your studies improve, I'll make sure your whole family lives, and then you can be their guide as I have been your guide.
With a heavy heart, I agreed, knowing this would please him.
You'll be the prototype for my paper.
He hands him a paper.
I looked at the piece of paper entitled Prussian Virtues and Vices, or Nüchternheit. I then looked at the harmony orchestra that was playing up there at the crematorium. My father was there, their music helping to make a smooth transition for the Jews from life to death.
Lights crossfade with the blue Danube. Time passes.
Leela and Tala,
Twins.
I met earlier.
We're being examined.
He turned to us.
The nurse.
And me.
And the SS guards.
In a jubilant mood. Nu wunderbar. They are lighter. Not yet blue, but definitely lighter. Who knows? Maybe I shall manage to turn those twins into 2 full-blooded Aryans.
Crossfade. Time passes with Rosa's voiceover. Projection. The Jack of Spades.
The cat.
With Roman's marching and reciting.
The cat was first domesticated in Egypt many years ago. Our ancestors, the Egyptians, believed cats were sacred. They worshipped a goddess named Bastet, whom they pictured with the body of a woman and the head of a cat. However, cats have not always been liked. During the Dark Ages, many people were afraid of cats. They thought cats had magical powers and were friends of witches. Today, cats live all over the world as household pets. Yet, even though the cat has been domesticated for such a long time, it still maintains its wild characteristics and can strike out at any time. The Jack of Spades card represents someone who can be charming you and then turn around and suddenly scratch you.
Nüchternheit, the blend of simplicity and sobriety. Nüchternheit also encompasses a degree of Spartanism and a horror of outward show. Other virtues include the readiness to serve, mostly in the military sense, but not unreservedly, and Pflichterfüllung, or doing one's duty. Modesty, thrift, discipline, and Opferbereitschaft, the willingness to accept sacrifice.
Sounds of airplanes.
On June 26, 1944, the sky over Auschwitz thundered and the wooden walls of the office barrack reverberated from the roar of engines. I saw
Professor Epstein rushing out from behind the Noma barrack, a valise in his hand.
Mengele's standing orders were that if the Allies bombed the camp, he must run out into the fields with all of his scientific documents on Noma.
Suddenly, it was all over. The planes flew away. An hour after the raid.
Twins.
The twins. Lila. And Tala
were brought in for their usual inspection.
Mengele examined the
girls' eyes.
Wunderbar. They are almost blue, Schwester. I want their eyes preserved in flackens.
Phenolic acid or benzene?
Benzene.
The nurse sterilized a syringe.
While the twins calmly looked at each other, expecting another injection aimed at changing the color of their eyes.
Nurse and twins exit. Crossfade, time passes. Nurse re-enters with 2 flacons with eyes in them.
In those flacons was all that remained of the beautiful Ramani twins.
Lights fade. Scene 4, the hearse. Lights up on Rosa and her deck of cards.
The 9 of spades. The card that first appears frightening because it indicates death. However, it does not mean that death is imminent. It only warns us of the possibility. The 10 of Spades card also deals with health problems, but more of a minor nature. When you get a 9 of Spades card, you know that the problem is serious and not to be avoided.
Lights fade as Rosa puts her hands over her face. Scene 5, the day Roman learned to howl. Lights up on the Romani camp.
Zoya? I called, but heard no answer. She normally worked with my...
Father.
Where is Zoya?
Mother looked
At me.
with a heavy sigh, but said nothing.
My grandfather.
Turned his gaunt face away.
Then my mother.
Put her arm around
My shoulder.
and pulled.
Me against her chest.
She's ill.
Ill? What is it? Dysentery? Typhus?
We don't know.
Crossfade.
Without another word, I rushed out. It was time to go to Appelplatz to be counted, but instead I dashed back, my feet sinking in the mud on my way. I went from barrack to barrack. She was not in the one marked with Acton, typhus, nor in the dysentery, scurvy, or pneumonia departments. Clutching my fist and feverishly whispering prayers, hoping against hope that she was not there. I entered the Noma Abteilung, from which so far not a single child or youngster had come out alive. I rushed among the tiers of bunks.
Epstein enters.
Are you looking for someone?
I did not answer, because at that very moment I saw her. I saw...
Zoya is revealed.
Zoya, her growing hair still covered by a scarf, her face drenched in sweat, her sunken cheeks underlining her.
Still beautiful, coal black eyes.
Roman, she tried to lift her hand to touch,
Cheek.
but it fell with no strength left in it.
Your wife? Sister?
Wife.
With the drugs and fresh food I get now, we have already managed to improve the state of some of the Noma patients. Don't give up hope. I shall do all I can to save her. I promise you, young man.
Lights crossfade. Time passes with the projection of all of the cards we've seen up till now.
I lay on my bunk, unable to close my eyes. I loved Zoya more than anything in the world. More even than my parents. On the top bunk of an adjacent set, someone tried to overcome their baby's weeping by softly singing the song of a camp poet.
In Auschwitz I die of hunger. In huge sheds they imprison us. In Auschwitz the couple is cruel. Life is so far off, and death so close the blackbird wants to tear up my heart. La di da di da 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 di da da da.
She stopped chanting and I could hear only her strangled sobs. I wish I could cry too, but I was no longer able.
The woman cried for all of us as she finished her lullaby, the strangest lullaby ever sung by a mother to a child.
Lights crossfade to Mengele's office. Time passes.
Without food, but still not hungry, I made my way to the office.
There on Mengele's desk stood the two flacons, like trophies. What is the matter, Roman?
For a while now, he had addressed me by my first name. Apart from my father, I had become his...
favorite gypsy.
I told him Zoya was ill, in hopes this would help, seeing as how he liked me.
Don't worry. I am on the point of conquering the disease. Your wife will recover. Meanwhile, you can visit her after your work. And of course, you'll see her when I do my rounds. Aren't you pleased?
I am.
I didn't hear you say thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Lights crossfade to Zoya's ward.
Later, I found Dr.
Epstein. We have everything that could help her. Freshly chopped meat, sulfatamine, vitamins. She's lost the willpower to stay alive. He put his arms on
my shoulder.
Only you can help. I'll have a nurse bring food and medicine. Try to feed her.
I went back.
As soon as the blonde nurse
brought a tin plate with meat and vegetables together with some pills.
I woke.
Zoya up.
Because I did not know how long I would be able to stay with her.
Slowly, she opened her eyes and looked.
Me.
As if in a daze.
But this time, she did not even utter my name. I tried to spoon some meat into her mouth.
But she closed it.
Please, Zoya, you must.
A faint flash of recognition flashed through her eyes, and miraculously,
she unclenched her teeth. I fed her with small spoonfuls of food, then gave her the pills with a glass of water.
She had eaten half of the portion given her.
Thank you, I said gratefully, both to her and to God.
Exhausted from the effort of eating, she
fell asleep.
Crossfade, time passes.
Day after day, I managed to visit my wife, and was even encouraged by
Mengele to go.
To her, to feed her and stay with her.
But it had nothing to do with any concern.
For me.
He wanted to see a Noma patient recover so he could document the case in his scientific paper on the illness, which
Dr. Epstein called in Czech the water cancer.
Crossfade, more time passes.
One day while I was at work, I desperately wanted to see my wife and...
Finally, the nurse looked at her watch and with Germanic precision said, "In half a minute, you can leave." Then she washed her hands, took off her white apron, and left.
She exits. Crossfade to Zoya's barrack.
I ran to the hospital past the
armed guards
and bolted into the Noma Abteilung, my eyes darting towards Zoya's bunk. My heart froze. It was empty. I dashed forward, frantically searching. She must have been moved to another place. I refused to believe the worst, but I could not find her. Methodically, I scanned the room, bunk after bunk, all 3 tiers.
Crossfade to Dr. Epstein.
I rushed over to the wooden partition, which was Professor Epstein's cabinet. He was sitting at his desk, studying an X-ray against the lamplight. My wife!
He lowered his eyes.
I let out a scream like a wounded animal, and then ran all the way back to the bed I had come to twice daily for the past weeks. But no miracle occurred. The bunk was still empty. I slumped down, my fingertips caressing the crumpled blanket left behind. I sat there motionless for a long time, stricken with pain, yet unable to weep and find some relief in tears. For in Auschwitz, I had forgotten how to cry. And I cursed the day I set eyes on her. and desired to be a harmony she could love.
Lights fade. Scene 6. Pachuri Daj descends. Lights up on Rosa. Lying down, cards in hand, the Mirga family about her. Projection, the Two of Hearts.
The Two of Hearts is a knot that can join two pieces of rope. It can create a lump or knob in a single piece of rope. The Two of Hearts is a symbol of unions, the strong bond that binds us, especially in marriage. It can also represent entanglements, problems that bind us and prevent us from doing what we would like to do. The bonds can be applied externally by other people or internally by ourselves. Our attitude toward the bonds can determine whether they are positive or negative. Sandu, remember when we were married by the Polish priest in our church? On that union of Lubin Street? It was the happiest day of my life. It was worth being born for it.
The moment she closed her eyes.
I knew she was gone, and I didn't care.
All of our companions stood silent, paying their respect to a woman who had seen generations of Romani grow, had taught girls how to tell fortunes, had administered medicine like a real doctor.
And who, now unable to do anything more for them, had taken her leave.
Lights fade. Scene 7. The Shero roams advice. Lights up on Demeter. Vala and Sandu center stage with the other Romani behind them. Mengele and Roman are downstage of them watching. Mengele having Roman march in the style of the Nazis. All the while, Roman is commenting on the action with the Romanis as though he were there.
My mother
Barely move after a day of lugging stones.
I didn't feel guilty. I should have been doing this work instead of her. But then, if I had, I wouldn't have been able to help. If help it was, my lovely Zoya in the hospital. My grandfather
Was sinking.
We watched, but could do nothing for him.
And when he started to talk about food, delicious food, after we got out of Auschwitz, and also time and again pointed at the crematoria as mood alternating between hope of life and the fear of death.
We knew that he had already been touched by the angel of death.
By the angel of death.
No longer was he able to wait until he got to an outside latrine. Nor could he close his mouth, dripping with saliva. His body was all bones. He could not stand upright, only sway, and then began to squat against the wall.
Sandu lays down. He dies.
One night, my grandfather did not get up from his bunk. And my father,
who was away with the orchestra, did not even have a chance to kiss him goodbye.
Lights up on Sandu. A reprise of Brahms' Hungarian Dance No. 4 in F-sharp minor is heard during the next dialogue.
he was probably put on to a pyre like the other dying Romanis.
His own son, playing the violin as his father's soul left his body that was now charred to ashes.
My father was
keeping going as best he could, even though he had lost both of his parents.
All
his elders.
His friends.
The elders leave the stage.
His people dying of illnesses because they weren't to be put in the crematorium because they were supposedly Aryan. and deserved a better death than the Jews,
Many Romanis leave the stage.
who were daily going into the bathhouses, soap and towel in their hands, and leaving the camp through the chimneys of the crematoria. He had no doubt that, in the end, the same would happen to him and to my mother. But he developed an irrational belief that somehow I would live through it all.
Music fades, crossfade as time passes.
One Sunday, after we returned from Lost in Control,
The lice control. He took my arm and led me outside. My father
sighed as his eyes turned towards the peaks of the Tatra Mountains in the distant south, all his longings for freedom, for traveling, and enjoying life mirrored in them, not for himself.
But after a while, he took me aside and said,
Roman, you must escape, and you must remember it all and write it down for the world to know, to make sure that it will never happen again.
Father, we have been here for 3 months, and not a single Romani has been gassed. I'm taking care of it, and we will become what they want.
He swallowed painfully.
And I saw the dimple on his chin covered by a film of sweat.
Do you think the Nazis would murder all the Jews and leave us as witnesses, unless they knew that in the end there would be no witnesses?
Lights fade to just Roman as he marches.
He wants his Aryan-looking son, me, who knows nothing and no longer cares for this desire to travel, not bathing and living on the road. Me, Sheroram?
Demeter exits, lights stay on Roman.
But I had no intention of fulfilling his wish. I couldn't. I had to admit to myself that I never wanted to be a Romani, and I never wanted to be Sheroram. If I did escape, it would be because I would become the race that would survive through this. An Aryan. If I had only just stayed in Poland, I would have never met and married Zoya, and I would never have felt pain. I could have married that waitress at Fouquier's. Being a Romani has only brought me pain.
Lights fade on Roman as he marches and recites.
These would include hard work, self-denial, self-control, selflessness, decency, honesty, cleanliness, respect for the law, acceptance of responsibility.
Scene 8, Zigeuner Lager. Lights up on Mengele's office.
The 6 p.m. roll call has been canceled, directing everyone in the office to stay on.
I felt a heavy weight on my chest. This has never happened before.
Pack all the files, Mengele ordered.
The nurse.
The SS typist.
And I
started on the work.
Darkness fell. Shortly after, I could hear the rumble of trucks moving along the Lagerstrasse and halting just opposite of us in front of the kindergarten.
Mengele left the office at once, motioning
for me
to stay behind.
Mengele exits to where the light crossfades to reveal Romani children.
A searchlight was focused on the kindergarten, and I could see silhouettes
of helmeted
SS guards, rifles in hand, running into the barracks.
Shrill, terrified cries of children were hearing.
Followed by heartbreaking pleadings and laments which rose above the noise of running engines.
The SS men were dragging.
Boys,
and girls
were desperately
desperately for their parents.
Even though the parents were no longer alive, for all the children in the kindergarten
were orphans.
Older boys
threw themselves
on the Nazis,
crying at their faces.
But
any resistance was immediately quashed
by blows from rifle butts,
which crushed the children's bones. I saw one
little boy falling onto his knees, clutching
a soldier's leg.
with a tearful plea. Mr. SS, please have pity on me. Let me live.
In response, the soldier grabbed the child,
swung the body, and smashed his skull against the truck.
2 girls bent down to kiss.
Mengele's hands.
Weeping. Uncle Mengele! Uncle Mengele!
The doctor searched his pockets and produced, as he always did, a few sweets.
Lights fade on children. Amaritsi Amari begins slowly and plays throughout the scene in different manifestations.
The searchlight was switched off. The hysterical sobbing of the children could be heard from the trucks until the drivers drove off fast towards the crematoria. From afar, I could still hear their shrill crying. But then their voices were drowned in the sounds of the orchestra. I knew my father was there, for the first time playing not for the Jews, but for the Romanis. Worse, the Romani children. The last sounds of music they were ever to hear.
Mengele appears.
Mengele returned to the office,
glanced at me,
and then said he was just fulfilling orders.
After an hour, we heard the trucks again. Barrack by barrack.
The hospital was being emptied.
Patients are revealed with soldiers.
No one
bothered to carry
the
the
sick
on
on
stretchers.
They were pushed,
by soldiers, or if unable to walk,
dragged
to the trucks,
and flung onto them like sacks. Some died on the way.
And the dead were thrown in with the living.
Then the trucks drove at full speed to the crematoria.
Until the entire hospital and all its divisions had been cleared.
I could see
Epstein is revealed.
Professor Epstein, in his white coat, looking for Dr. Mengele so that he could appeal to him.
But he was stopped by a soldier who shouted, "Ruf auf den Wagen!"
Get into the truck.
Ich bin Juda!
Ach so, dann hast du noch ein paar Wochen Zeit. Zurück in den Berg.
As you are a Jew, you still have a few weeks' time. Back into the barrack.
The lights were finally switched off as the last trucks left. All the sick had been taken for the last bath at the crematorium.
I felt no pain, nor could I cry anymore. For how much more can you suffer after your beloved wife has died? And most of your people have been taken to be gassed and then burned. But with my hair now grown out again, and my desire to just get out of this place, I looked at my keeper. I was about to say something when
Mengele glanced at his watch. Almost midnight. As you can see, I no longer need a dolmetscher or a protege.
He beckoned to an SS guard.
Then out of his pocket, he pulled a typewritten sheet and
handed it to the soldier.
Take this gypsy to barrack number 1, he said. It's a transfer to the railway building squad.
He smiled at me and said,
You were what I wanted my future to be.
Lights crossfade on Roman's trip to barrack number 1. Hospital staff exits. Demeter appears in the shadows, and Roman runs to him and embraces him.
My father pointed
to the outlines of Birkenau village. I am Sherarum of our Campania, the Sherarum with all other 8 council of elders gone. You are not only my son now, Roman. You will be Sherarum. I want you to never forget our history. Make sure to tell it to those that survive around our campfires.
He recalled quickly how almost the entire Ramani army, which had been pursued by invading armies, had fled their homelands. The world they fled to swallowed them up, and they had been forced to wander, and then forced into slavery, and then back to wandering again.
And now it is happening again. Our nation is sinking, but don't forget that the few Ramanis survived, and thanks to them, our nation was reborn, he pressed.
My palms hard with his hands.
Trying to imbue
In me.
His obstinate desire.
For me to live, as if it were my power to decide.
Sound of a gong.
How am I going to escape?
You'll find out how, and then you will let the world know that what can't even be imagined. Even if it does learn the truth one day, it will try hard to forget it as soon as possible. So you must live in order to remind it.
All I could do was to throw my arms around my father. The embrace was a promise, because that was what my father wanted so desperately from me. A promise to fulfill his impossible.
Dream.
Of my
escape from Auschwitz.
Demeter kisses his son and runs off, picking up his violin from the ground. Roman runs to barrack number 1.
From barrack number 1, the doors were
guarded by SS men,
who recognized me and let me in, but then no one could venture out.
The fast version of Amaritsi Amari begins.
I could see the continuous flames rising from crematoria number 1 and number 2 into the sky, and listened to the violins playing Ramani melodies, the sound of music loud in the quiet night. I wondered what my father was feeling, or whether perhaps like me, he was feeling nothing at all. His eyes dry, his heart void.
Koro is revealed.
In my dark barrack there was one Ramani from my compania.
Koro Kaval.
Once again, we heard
motor vehicles.
This time removing everyone.
Camp is revealed with Ramanis and SS.
The SS men went from barrack to barrack.
Rounding up the Romanis.
Not expecting
any opposition.
But there was furious resistance.
I heard sounds of terror.
The women shrieked of
murder. But also the
cries of men.
Even the old ones
fighting back.
From the dark campfire came gunshots and bursts of machine gun fire.
As those who threw themselves on the Nazis with
knives,
razors,
sticks.
Their own hands.
Were selling their lives dearly.
The operation lasted for hours.
Ramanis move in and out of the light.
Headlights shining as they moved on and stopped coming nearer and nearer to us.
The last barrack on the right or the far side of the main street from the crematoria.
The lights fade on the rest of the camp.
The camp had become dark, deserted and silent, except for the distant sounds of violin music. The clattering of barrack windows and doors left ajar, and the sinister hum of the electrified barbed wire.
Mengele is revealed with another German soldier, Huss.
Then I heard
horses galloping. It was Mengele in long riding boots, breeches and white gloves on his regular night ride through the camp.
A white stallion also loomed out of the darkness, its rider
joining him.
It was Huss, the commandant himself.
The two
officers halted on the road to look back at the now empty camp. Schade, die Romantics, die Säunerlagers, he said.
What a pity we have lost the romance of the gypsy camp.
Then he spurred his horse.
I almost sensed him looking at barrack number 1 to make sure I was inside. I didn't know what to think about that, but I almost felt comforted.
Hus and Mengele exit.
The two officers rode away out of the Zigeuner Lager, where family life had existed for the past 16 months until it was stuffed out by the night of August 2nd, 1944. The night of the Auschwitz massacre of more than 4,000 Romanis.
Crossfade, time passes.
Hours later, I was still glued to the window, never having closed my eyes, listening to the orchestra, knowing that my father's music had accompanied my mother on her last journey. Yet assured that, as long as I could hear the sounds of his violin, he at least was still alive.
A lone violin continues to play Amaritzi Amari. Crossfade to daylight. SS men are revealed, and a few Romani.
In the first pale light of the breaking day, I saw
SS men fanning through the camp, seeking
Out of
out
the
the
few
few people still hiding in the trees or clinging to roofs.
and shooting them on the spot.
Lights fade on the camp.
Then, the guns fell silent.
Tongues of flames were still rising into the sky from the crematoria, but not a sound was breaking the stillness of the faded night.
The music has stopped. Lights up briefly on Demeter, dropping his violin. Lights fade on Demeter.
My hands grabbed at the windowsill. There's no music anymore. The violins stopped playing.
The lights fade. Scene 9, what now? Lights fade up on some Romani men, including Koro and Roman.
My group consisted of about 20 men.
Koro Kaval among them,
We were felling trees in the forest.
so that another group could lay the timber into the railway.
We had, I figured, a few weeks more time, just like Professor Epstein and his colleagues, before our work was completed. I thought wearily how even a criminal like Mengele had even a soft spot in his heart and let me live a bit longer. If our entire band of young Romanis, armed with saws and axes, threw themselves on the SS guarding us, we could kill several of them, and perhaps some of us would succeed in escaping. If a bullet cut me down, I shrugged at the thought. I would suffer a fate no worse than the rest of my family. Nor would I care, since there was no one left to live for. Now, even Mengele couldn't save me. But then, almost instantaneously, it dawned on me that I was wrong. I was not alone. There was Mara. Possibly she was safe in the forest farm, some 10 or 15 kilometers away. I felt a pang in my heart, a twinge of emotion, as if I were suddenly coming back to life. One thought haunted me all afternoon and was becoming an obsession.
Escape.
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 That was what my father had told me.
Escape
and tell the world.
Tell the world.
But it was more than that now. Escape. Find your little sister and live.
You'll be Shadow Rum when I die.
My father's words resounded in my ears.
Father's words, God's words.
My grandfather used to say, as usual quoting a Romani proverb to underline the wisdom of his pronouncement.
Lights fade on the Mirgas.
Back in the barrack, I began to work out a plan. My eyes looked over each bunk.
The men were eating their evening meal, picking out lights or chatting
among themselves.
I did not know them. I could not trust them. The idea of a mass break would never work because someone would betray us. Someone who would naively hope that denouncing the others might gain him life. And yet it was better for at least 2 men to run away. so that one could help the other if the need arose. I knew.
Only one man in the barrack. He sat there.
Not far from me.
On his bunk.
And I looked at him. Since our fight in the Polish forest 18 months ago.
In Hungary. And in the Barku camp. Karol Kaval.
And I had not spoken to each other. True, he used to be my rival, and I
had taken Zoya from him, but Zoya was no longer alive. He was no longer my enemy.
Koro, I said without hesitation, I am planning to escape. Do you want to escape with me?
He looked up surprised, baffled, his eyes measuring.
Me. I swallowed hard. Because
all he had to do to get his revenge was to walk over to an SS guard and report what I had said. His hands rubbed his face as if he was awakening from a bad dream. Where to? He uttered.
I lowered my voice. To that farm where we left my sister. Perhaps we can find shelter there as well.
We'll never get there. They will shoot us down.
It's a chance we have to take. We are in the forest already. The trees will offer us some cover, and it's easier to disappear in a forest. At least we can give it a try. If not, so what? It's the same end for us as for the others in the squad. Only a few weeks earlier.
When do you want to go?
Tomorrow. Right after the noon break.
Without looking up?
At me.
He nodded. Tomorrow, then.
Good night, Koro.
Good night, Roman.
Lights crossfade to the trees the next day.
The sun was high.
Above us.
My heart pounded as I sat on the slope of the rail bed, wiping my plate clean with the last piece of bread. I looked over at the guards.
They were still eating.
Still eating heartily.
Koro, sitting a few meters away.
From me, and I exchanged
glances.
An SS sergeant blew a whistle. Back to work!
And we started returning to the forest.
Now, I said.
To Koro.
Not together, we must run apart. And I dashed forward into the forest.
Trees rushed by us.
Behind me, I could hear shouts of
Verflucht, Banditen.
And rifle shots ricocheting from the tree trunks or
whistling by my head.
Then the rat-a-tat-tat machine gun fire crackled through the air.
But both Koro and I were already in the dense part of the forest, where no trees had been felled, where there were no large open spaces.
Just thick woodland to protect us.
The German curses and the bursts of machine gun fire.
Lights fade on the soldiers and other harmony.
We're fading away behind us. Koro! I shouted.
He was not far from me, and he answered. We ran about 50 meters apart.
Always towards the south.
Keeping among the trees for perhaps an hour until completely out of breath.
We reached a small clearing. Only now in the distance could I hear the sirens sounding the alarm in the camp.
Then the pursuing Nazis would soon be reinforcing by a squad of armed men.
No doubt accompanied by dogs.
Koro, on the other side of the clearing, was sprawled on the ground, completely out of breath.
We must go on, I cried. But as I managed to stagger to my feet and...
A German soldier enters.
SS man appeared. He emerged from the trees nearby.
He did not notice me.
He saw Koro and aimed his gun at him.
I threw myself on the man. The bullet grazed my arm, but it did not hit
Koro.
The German fell to the ground.
And I found myself with a strength I did not know I still possessed.
On top of him,
Roman and the soldier fight. Roman smashes the soldier's gun on the soldier's head. He dies.
Get his rifle and ammunition, quick! I did not
have to repeat
my orders. At last, I grinned. I am the Sheoram of my compania.
Koro.
And me. I knew it was hard for him to say it.
But he said it. Thank you, Sheoram.
And then he did something I did not expect at all.
He cried and kissed his newfound leader.
Lights fade on Koro and Roman. Scene 10, Mara. Lights up on Mara dressed as a peasant girl.
A little peasant girl, neatly dressed in a red skirt and white blouse. Her dark braids tied back with ribbon, playing hopscotch by herself, close to the back porch of a farmhouse.
Lights crossfade to reveal Koro and Roman.
I motioned to Koro and...
We both ran across the open field. Among the green vegetable beds.
Until we reached a patch of tall sunflowers close to the forest. I dashed into the trees, and from there, my heart stopped. It was my sister.
Mara.
Tears pressed in the months of camp life welled up into my eyes. I knew then that I had escaped death, killed the German guard, and managed to stay alive just for this one moment. I could not contain myself any longer. Mara was alive and safe. I darted across the open gate of the wooden fence of the backyard.
Mara looked up.
Me.
And at...
Koro right behind.
Me and...
Frightened, ran back to the porch, shouting, Pani Stefa!
I realized that she had never seen men in strange striped clothes or holding rifles in their hands. Mara! Mara! It's me, Roman!
Peasant woman is revealed.
The wooden door creaked open and a large peasant woman appeared.
But my sister
was already running towards me.
Roman drops his rifles and spins Mara, crying around and around.
She recognized
Koro
and smiled to him. Then she moved her head back. And Mama and Papa?
I answered with a tight hug, and for a moment
she forgot the question.
Crossfade, time passes.
After a couple of months of hiding in my sister's keeper, the Russians came on January 18th, 1945, to tell us that the war was over. During those months, I wrote, I went back to the day I first learned the Romanis were being taken to the Warsaw Ghetto, and we had decided to escape. It was as fresh in my mind as if it were yesterday, and yet in some ways it seemed to be ages ago. At another time, and in another place. I kept my promise to my father, the Sheoram.
Koro started to notice.
Girls again.
And Penny Stefa was now a lifelong companion of her adopted Romani family.
Lights crossfade to just Roman.
On the day we were liberated, I finally knew what it was to be a Romani. This innate sense of community and family, and what it was to suffer. But no matter how many Romanis had died in the camps or had been shot on the roads.
Lights reveal all of the Polska Roma coming back into their lovely tiles in our Zoom room from the top of the play.
The
Romani nation had survived.
I was happy to be their Sheoram.
Lights fade on Roman backlit, and all the Romanis on stage backlit. Lights brighten, and then slowly go out on just Roman, blackout. End of play. Yay, thank you, everyone. Please use your clap hand icons, your party icons, your love icons. Thank you so much for joining us in our And the Violins Stopped Playing Part 2. And if you watched Part 1, I know there's one person in here who did. Thank you for going through this long process with us. I hope you, it's difficult to say after Part 2, enjoyed it, but I hope you enjoyed it. And I want to take this time to really thank all of the participants that are in here for taking their time being with us. And as a reminder, please, I love to pay artists. So please, if you can, donate whatever you have. I know these are terrible times, to the givebutter.com link. And if you would like to talk to our lovely cast members, I'm going to give them a little bio break. You should take a bio break. Go to your concession stand called your kitchen. Get yourself a glass of wine, some grog, some beer, some vishniak, some borscht, something to celebrate our times. And we'll be back in a couple of minutes. I'll play a little bit of Ramani music to play us out for the time being. Thank you so much.
Oh, I was actually crying when I was reading some of the lines.
I know, I did too when I played you the other night. It was tough. The part where it says I wasn't supposed to cry, I was like bawling. It's good, John. It's good For anybody who has never heard the band Kasokolom, they're a Hungarian gypsy band. You should get their CDs, or well, that's very old of me. You should download their
Their CDs. Man, you gotta get with
I
the
own their
times.
CDs.
Jesse, will you make me a mixtape?
Oh, fun. Yeah, I would. I was about, yeah.
And I can put it in my Walkman.
Yes, girl.
And my boombox.
Yep.
Oh.
Jesse, do you make mixed CDs for the students anymore?
I don't.
It used to be the best part.
I know. You know what's so funny is I actually saved all of your guys' playlists that I made for you, and my husband makes fun of me. He's like, you have too many playlists. I was like, don't delete them. Those are my boys. Those are my girls. You wouldn't have to delete them. Now my students are like, what mix CDs? What are you talking about? Oh, we used to take the quizzes that you guys, they now take them online. But the quizzes used to be live, like a trivia game. And they would get, all out drag out screaming would occur. Like they would get so mad at each other. They were so competitive. They would like watch those prezzies like they were life's bread. Ooh. Anyway, Alicia and John
I think
are
I
like,
had the most
those
CDs by the
prezzies
end
are
of that.
lame. Alicia and John are taking that class right now. Okay, so we did have some questions from the chat. So Theta Barra, which I'm probably completely oh, you know this person. Okay, did I say that name right?
Theta Barra, she's the old black and white actress. That's my mom.
Got it. Was this play based on a true story? Yes. Is Alexander Ramati got the memoirs from Roman Mirga. They just ended up being at a train station together, is the story I've been told. If Maya Ramati, his daughter, watches this and can clarify that, but that's what I know, is that he had the memoirs. So at the end, when Roman says that during the time that they got to Pani Stefa's farm, and then stayed there until they were liberated by the Soviets, he wrote, and that what he wrote were those memoirs, as his father had instructed him. Monica Brandt said, wonderful read. Thank you, everyone. Josef Mengele was nicknamed the Angel of Death. He escaped Germany and relocated in Brazil, where he died in 1975. He deserved a worse fate. Yes.
It was Argentina, not Brazil.
Yeah, oh yeah, it was Argentina. Yeah, and there's a lot of films that are sort of like inspired by that guy and other things. Is it Marathon Man?
There's a lot of movies about him.
No,
yeah, Marathon Man was one. There's Boys from Argentina was another one.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, there's a Lord Laurence Olivier played him. A very creepy version of him. Worth seeing. Ooh, with Dustin Hoffman playing like as a dentist, like doing his teeth. Oh, it's terrible.
He's also a main character of a video game.
Is he?
Josef Mengele, yeah. For this video game Blood Rain, he's one of the main villains, because like in the game you like fight the Nazis as a vampire, because the Nazis had like a weird obsession with the occult. So they were trying to like it's some real weird stuff. So not only like part of that whole the twin surgery stuff, Josef Mengele had a lot of experiments with twins. Like he would like to get twins, so he would like do Corsican experiments on them. Like he would inflict pain on one to see if the other one would feel it. These were a lot of like his experiments, and they had that in the video game Blood Rain.
Word. Yeah, Brian and I watched a lot of movies about Mengele when I was writing this play.
Yeah, he's a terrible person.
Yeah, I shudder to think of those evenings where like, oh, we're having a movie night. We have all these movies about Mengele.
You're probably on some type of watch list because of that. I'm just letting y'all know that.
Oh yeah, because you had to buy them back then. We had to order them and get them sent to our house.
I still have the videotapes from. Yeah. We found two on Amazon.
Yeah.
Back before Amazon was a streaming service, boys and girls.
Yes.
And they only came in VHS.
Yes.
And so our roommate had already fucked up my VHS player not too long before then. And so we bought these things, and they were not cheap. They were like, I don't know, at the time, probably 25 or 30 bucks a pop for some sort of recycled.
Because you're getting
they were out of print.
Yeah.
So
they were like,
what's a videotape?
I still have some.
Boys from Brazil.
You guys are you're letting people know how old you are. Just be like, what's a videotape?
So they were like it was like a USB stick that you stuck into a thing that cost like $20, but they jacked up the price to $4,000.
And it was the size of a notebook.
In the beginning.
I could take that one worse. We had a Betamax player in the 80s.
I had a Betamax, and I'm not from the 80s.
Yeah, but you got older siblings, boy.
You're right. And old parents.
Yes.
Yeah, we got these two like History Channel documentary things back before you could go to YouTube and find most of them or stream it on whatever site for those older ones. And they were pretty dark and informative at the same time, but like done in a 30 or 40 minute documentary thing with a narrator and stuff. And then there was Boys from Brazil. It wasn't Argentina. It was the movie with Gregory Peck.
So
one of my
so Chanel's mom was right.
Well, he ended up in Argentina where he died.
Yeah. But
Yeah, I mean,
one of my uncles left me a record of like old speeches from like Nazis and stuff, because he had like a weird collection of like speeches on record. And yeah, I used one of those speeches for one of my songs before.
That's happening. And I lie, I'm drawing again. It's been so long.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, if we have a couple people here who are artists of different sorts, and if you go to the playbill, you can get to Kane, which is Boo Boo's work, and Malik's work, which is Malik's work, and then Gigi, who is Gigi Bella.
You got to add the other link.
She's also a top-seeded slam poet in the country, so there's a link to her as well. She's amazing. Not that any of these artists aren't amazing. I'm just saying you can go look at more of their work. There's links in the playbill. Any other questions, comments? All right. I think I will wait 20 more seconds because I just asked that question. That's a little odd. And then I'm going to go off stream and we can have a cheers and have a better day. And hopefully we can see each other soon moment off camera of the world in the ether. Have I wasted 20 seconds?
Hey, Jess.
Hey, what?
My girlfriend said she loved the show.
Oh, tell her I thank you. And I hope to meet her someday.
You will.
Also loved it.
My girlfriend said
we're all
this show
allowed
was
to
long
see
and
each other
sad.
again.
If I had a girlfriend, I'm sure she
I'm
said
gonna go
she
ahead
would
and
love it.
end the stream.